Hi, my name is Josh Potter, and I'm the lead pastor here at Sioux City First Church. I want to take a moment to thank you for watching today's video. I truly hope that you find it life-giving, challenging, and encouraging. We do want to get to know you beyond a YouTube video, so I want to encourage you, go and visit our website, SiouxCityFirst.org. You'll find lots of information there, ways to connect with us, ways to give to support what we're doing here at the church. But just want to give you an opportunity to get to know us a little bit more by going to the website. Once again, we'd love to meet you in person, and hopefully you can join us soon. Otherwise, go visit our website. We hope that you have a great week, and we hope that you're inspired by today's message. Thank you. Have a great week.
Well, it is so good to have you here this morning. If you have a Bible with you, I'd encourage you to turn to Job chapter 38. That's where we're going to eventually get to, but I want to just once again, thank you for being here. We're so glad that you're here. We did a little mini-series here at the church called Picking Up the Pieces. And if you look at the picture on the screen, that is the aftermath of a tornado. And you know that when it comes to tragedy and crisis, oftentimes it feels like a tornado. It comes through quickly, and it leaves a lot of damage in the wake. There's a lot of ways that we have to pick up the pieces, whether it's loss in our lives, just the trials, the tests of life that come. And so we've been taking a couple weeks. Last week we heard from Corey and Carrie Musburger, who shared what it was like walking through. They had a miscarriage several years ago and talked about some of the struggles with anxiety. And we just pray that the message was a blessing to you and an encouragement to you. And the same is true. We're going to hear a testimony this morning as well. But we also talked about Job in Scripture. And in the book of Job, chapter 1, we learned about Job. He was a man who is described as upright and blameless. I don't know about you, but I would love for God to describe me that way one day. But he said he was upright and blameless. He was a man who feared God, and he shunned evil. What a testimony. And really the wording there describes a man who is mature in his faith. Complete, whole is the way it's described in the Hebrew. And this is before the tragedy strikes him. And so as he walks through, at some point Satan and God have a conversation, and Satan says, hey, I've been walking to and fro, just searching the earth. And God says, have you considered my servant Job? And he describes him the same way. Blameless, upright, fears God, shuns evil. And God, then Satan says, well, you've put a hedge of protection around him, so of course he's going to serve you. You've given him everything he could possibly want in life, so you've made it easy for him. And God says, okay, he's like, you can have all that he has, but you can't lay a finger on him. Any possession he has, you can have, but you can't lay a finger on him. And so Satan says, deal, and we know what happens next. Job's 10 children die. Job loses all of his animals, all of his livestock. We know he has over 7,000 sheep. It describes it in Job 1. He has all of these animals, livestock, his way of living. He lost all of his servants were taken away from him. He lost everything you could possibly imagine, every possession. See, the enemy believed if I can get to their possessions, I can get to him. But he couldn't get to Job. Job's response after he lost all of those things was to shave his head, to humble himself, and to worship God. Imagine that. Satan goes back to God and says, well, skin for skin, I couldn't get him through his possessions, but I can surely get him through his health, and so I'm going to inflict his health. And God says, okay, but you can't take his life. And he says, okay. He inflicts him with these boils all over his body. Think of having shingles or some other boils all over, those of you that have experienced that. It's so irritating. He's broken pottery and using pottery to scrape off the boils on his body. He's absolutely miserable. And then him and his wife get into a big argument. She's clearly struggling with the loss of their 10 children, with everything else that's happening. She's really mad at Job as well. And Job responds once again in a very mature, thoughtful, complete mature way that he's described. He says, shall we accept the good from God and not trouble? Because what Job knew is something you have all probably found out in your life at some point, is that trouble comes for you. Trouble will come upon your life. Jesus told us so in John 16:33. He says, in this world you will have trouble. He didn't say you might. He said you will have trouble. And in that trouble, he walks with us, and he walked with Job through that trial. And then after Job and his wife get in this big argument, Job's 3 friends come to his side. Now, these are actual friends of his. And we should thank God for friends. But his friends, sometimes we have friends that are trying to be helpful, but they say really stupid things. Have you ever been to a funeral before? People are trying to help you grieve, and they sometimes say some of the most insane things to us at funerals. Trying to be helpful and thoughtful, but they aren't. And Job's friends were exactly that way. They came to him in his moment of need and pain and loss and grief, and they accuse him. They say things about him, about God. And so for the next 30-some chapters, we see all of this interaction. Job's friend says something, then Job responds. Job's other friend says something, then Job responds. Then Job's other friend says something, then Job responds. Then Job says something, then they respond. For over 30 chapters of the Bible, we see Job and his friends walking through the tension of what Job experienced. It was hard, it was difficult, there were accusations. And then God finally gets completely exhausted with all that they're saying and doing. And in chapter 38, God begins to speak. And I want you to look in chapter 38. God speaks out of the pain and the hurt, and it says out of the storm, he speaks to Job. And I want to look at chapter 38, the very, very first verse. It says this: Then the Lord spoke to Job out of the storm. He said, "Who is this that obscures my plans with words without knowledge?" That wasn't a compliment. Look at what he says to Job. "Brace yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me." Like, I look at this as like a father sitting across the table with his son who just did something he knew he wasn't supposed to do, and his dad's like, "Brace yourself because I'm about to go off." He says in verse number 4, look at this. He says, "Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it? On what were its footings set, or who laid its cornerstone while the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy?" God is starting to lay out a clear picture of creation that Job has probably never actually thought through before. And he's really essentially asking Job 3 questions in these 4 chapters of the Bible. He's asking him this. Can you explain my creation? That's a clear no. He couldn't explain his creation. The other question he was going to ask him is this: can you oversee my creation? Now, we can barely handle what life throws at each one of us, let alone everybody else's problems, or let alone everything else that's going on in the world. Then he asked him this question: can you subdue my creation? The answer to every single one of these questions was a resounding no. He couldn't possibly understand any of those things. And so he responds in Job-like fashion, in humility. And we pick it up in chapter 42. Flip over a couple pages in your Bible. Here's what he says. It says, "Then Job replied to the Lord, I know that you can do all things. No purpose of yours can be thwarted. You asked, who is this that obscures my plans without knowledge?" Look at what he says. "Surely I spoke of things I did not understand, things too wonderful for me to know." Have you ever thought you knew something about something and you really had no clue? It's kind of the picture where Job is. This is a picture of humility. This is a picture of a man who's realizing, I was out of my league trying to speak on things I shouldn't have been speaking on. And I think it's a good picture. Sometimes it's good for us to be in that position, realizing we may not know as much as we think we know. Verse number 4, he says, "You said, now listen now, and I will speak. I will question you, and you shall answer me." Verse number 5, I think it's just an underliner or highlight in your Bible app, whatever you need to do. It says, "My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you." I'm going to come back to that one. But in verse 6, he says, "Therefore, I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes. I want to go back to verse number 5 because do you remember in Job chapter 1 how it described Job was blameless and upright? Other translations say perfect and upright. But he says, my ears had heard of you. It's believed that Job, we see this right before the book of Psalms. We tend to think that this is post-law probably. It's more likely that Job lived during the patriarchal times. In fact, he married one of Abraham's descendants. And so we see that he lived long before this, probably what we might usually understand chronologically in the Bible. He lived during the patriarchal times. It was pre-law. And we'll see that with his age here in a little bit. But during that time, people had heard about God and they had lived for God based off of what they had heard of him, not having seen him, not having walked through some of the things that they would have to walk through later on through the journey through the desert, the Israelites, when the law is established. He had heard of him much like our kids hear of him. And he chose to follow him, and he was blameless and he was upright. But he had heard of God, but now he's saying, I see you. There's a couple things I think we need to understand that he's really trying to say here. It's reminding us of one of the most powerful aspects of God in our lives, and it's that we can hear his word proclaimed. We can hear God speak in chapters 38, 39, 40, and 41. He heard him speak. He heard his voice. But now he's reminding us of the most powerful thing of God, and it's the presence that God displays when we walk through the most difficult and challenging moments of our lives. He had heard of God, and he had followed God as a result of hearing. He was a man of God. But now he has seen God in a new way. He didn't see him literally, but this idea was that he was literally real to him in a way that he had never been before by virtue of his presence. God walks with us in those dark moments. After Job speaks, God goes to Job's 3 friends. And he essentially tells them, you need to go to Job. He's going to make some sacrifices and reconcile what's between them and reconcile them with God. And then we start to see the restoration of Job, where in chapter 1 he had 7,000 sheep. Now God is giving him 14,000 sheep. Where he had 10 children before, now he has 10 more children, resulting in a total of 20 children. God restores Job after all of this time and after all the tragedy. And I want to read what it says in Job chapter 42, 16 and 17. It says, after this, after God had restored all things, it says, Job lived 140 years. He saw his children and their children to the 4th generation. And so Job died an old man and full of years. He lived another 140 years. It's believed that he lived anywhere from 200 years old up to, most people believe he lived 240 years old. And got to experience a lot of that, the restoration of God during those 140 years. God let him see his children and their generation to the 4th generation. A couple thoughts before we share a testimony with you. The first one is this: you will oftentimes experience God in a deeper way when you walk through tragedy, pain, heartache, and crisis. I hate that it has to be that way, but that's the way that it comes. And here's something that we learn throughout life. It's that in Christ, our suffering is not removed, it's redeemed. What we oftentimes want most in the middle of it is, God, take me out of this. God, bring us through this. God, help us. We want to get out of it. It's hard, it's painful. God doesn't always remove us, but he does redeem what happens. And we're going to hear one of those stories this morning. I'm going to ask Ray and Jeannie if you guys want to make your way up this morning. We're going to hear a story from Ray and Jeannie just of God's sustaining work in our lives and just what God can do in the midst of difficult things. Thank you, Pastor Tyler. Jim, can you help him grab one of those? Sorry, I should have asked you before. Ray and Jeannie, you guys can come up. If there's one thing Ray loves, it's public speaking. And so Ray is really excited to be up front with the bright lights on him. And we are so glad. I went over and I visited with Ray and Jeannie this week. And they were in a small group we were part of. And so we got to know them. And we've gotten to know them over the years. Ray, they have a long legacy here at the church. The building that we're in, Ray was a part of helping to build, and so we're going to kind of go back in time. You guys have been married for 60 years, right? It'll be 61 years next month, or is it June? June. So they'll be married 61 years. They've been married for longer than I've been alive. And they've seen God's hand in their lives in incredible ways. So Ray, you were brought up in a home where it was Baptist, Methodist, Presbyterian, kind of a catch-all faith. And so they just kind of went and moved around, but he had some foundations laid in his life. Jeannie, you were raised at First, here at First Assembly, over Myrtle, and so these are our historical, they know all of the historical context of our church. And so whenever we have questions about our church, we're like, hey, who is this one person that did this one thing? And Jeannie's like, it was this person. And so we can know. They just have the historical context of our church and our family and a lot of things, and we're thankful for that. So you were raised in church by your mother. Your father passed away at a young, how were you, 13? Okay. So you were raised in church, and then you got married when you were 18? How old? 18. You were 18, okay. And Jeannie, you were 20 when you got married? Okay.
A week and a day out of high school.
A week and a day. Graduated high school and then is getting married just a week. Yeah, wow. Okay. So you guys are young lovebirds. And they get married, and 9 months later, Kamel comes along. And your first daughter comes along, and your young parents, 19 years old. Were you still 18 when Kamel was born, or were you 19 by then? 19. Okay. So then a year and a half goes by. You have another daughter, Carsey, and she, for most of her life, had convulsions. Yeah. And so when she was 10 months old, she passed away.
Yes.
So imagine being 20 years old, 22 years old, having one daughter, you're raising two daughters, and one of them passes away, 10 months old. That's a lot to walk through for anybody, let alone at the age that you guys were at. And then, so Jeannie, as a young mom, that's kind of, I know it was, just kind of what's your mindset like when you're 22 years old and lose a 10-year-old daughter?
10-month-old. Yeah, it was a difficult time in our life, but our faith was strong. We knew that.
Sorry. Yeah, it's on. You're good.
Okay, sorry. Maybe I just need to.
May I hold it up a little bit? Yeah.
Our faith was strong
Yeah.
at that time, and we didn't walk alone through that. We were part of a small group. I don't know how to explain, but lots of young Sunday school group.
Yeah.
Yes, a large group, probably 40 people.
Okay.
They were stood beside us, walked through that time with us. So we knew the Lord didn't make mistakes, and we trusted Him, and that's really how we got through that experience at such a young age.
Yeah, having just as Corey and Carrie attested to, having friends to walk through these moments within life is absolutely essential, an essential part of us making it through to the other side. Now, 2 or 3 years later, Stacy comes along.
Yes.
Yep.
So there's a 5-year gap between Kamel and Stacy, is that right?
Right.
Okay. So Stacy comes along, and now you're raising your children to know the Lord, bringing them to church, mission, all those different things. You guys are a part of all those things coming to church.
Yes.
So, Ray, you're working for the phone company?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so Ray's working, and we're going to fast forward a little bit. and this is kind of the harder part of the story. So you're working, and there's a coworker, And
It started out friendly
in a
conversation.
sense, yeah.
Yeah.
So we know how sin can work in our lives. It can start real small, and it can develop into something much bigger, which is what happened.
Yes.
So now, 19 years into marriage,
Right?
you find yourself in an affair with another woman.
Yes.
You work with her.
Yes.
One day, you feel a little bit of distance probably growing between you two.
A little, yeah.
Not like a massive thing that's happening.
No,
But one night, Ray, you're on the couch and chair at home, and Ray comes home and says to you, can I have a divorce?
Can I ask you a question?
Can I ask you a question? It wasn't like, hey, they're in the middle of a fight or anything. This is just,
Nope.
hey, can I ask you a question? And then he asked you, can I have a divorce?
Can I have a divorce?
So now you look back on it. In the moment, maybe not so much, but you look at that moment as the Holy Spirit probably gave you your response.
Had to have been
Had
the
to.
Holy Spirit.
So how do you respond when he says, can I have a divorce?
I don't have one to give. That was my exact words. And don't ask me how I would have. First of all, I was totally unprepared for the question.
Yeah.
But the Lord had to have given me that answer because calmly I responded, I don't have one to give. Got up and left the room.
Yeah.
Went to where I could cry by myself because I wasn't about to cry in front of him and didn't.
So you leave the room, you go put your face in the towel and cry.
I do.
Yeah. And yeah, so then this isn't just a, hey, I've told you you're divorced, we're going to work through. For the next, what you don't know at that time is going to be 5 years that you're walking through this. The affair continues.
Yes.
So for 5 years, now I just want you to understand, you guys are going to church every week.
Yes.
At first, there were some weeks
She
She
I
was.
was there.
You were there, yeah. Ray wasn't really there. He was there physically, but probably not really allowing the Lord to speak some things that he probably needed to speak into your life.
Nobody would speak to me.
Yeah. So Ray wasn't exactly, hey, I'm going to hang out at church as long as I can. It was, let's walk into church and get out of church as quick as we can.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. So Kamel's at college. Yes.
She leaves to go to college that year. There's a lot of tension in our home. And one of the girls mentioned about the tension in our home, and I said, do you think we fight? And they said, fight? You don't even speak to each other. And I went, these kids know that we're having a problem?
Yeah.
That was the first year, and I was like, I didn't realize that they were aware. We're living in the same house.
Yeah.
We eat dinner together every night at the table. Ray isn't talkative at that point. It's me conversing with the girls. He's there just long enough to eat the food, leave the table, go and watch TV, find someplace else to be.
Husband's having an affair. You're sitting at dinner every single night eating with him and the girls,
Every
talking.
night. Right.
And this was another thing that was a big thing for you that you mentioned was you never badmouthed Ray to the girls.
No, I did not.
Even though you could have, or in lots of families that can happen. You were very intentional, I'm not going to do that.
I wasn't going to do that. I knew that, I honestly don't know. I did not know this was going to go on for a long period
Yeah.
of time.
Yeah.
I didn't anticipate that, but then again, every day I did not know what tomorrow might hold.
Yeah.
I was being realistic, thinking, I just wasn't trusting the Lord. And truly, it was a day by day, sometimes moment by moment thing for me, because it was a struggle, always not knowing whether tomorrow we were going to be together. I did not know. I could not it isn't like making a plan. I trusted the Lord and walked with him, went for walks, and he was my counselor. He's the only one I could turn to. I was not going to turn to friends and badmouth my husband. I did not know who he was seeing. I did not know what was really happening, except he was not happy. He was not happy at home. He told me he no longer loved me. That was another one of the real hard things to go through.
You never want your husband to utter those words to you. And so you're going for walks, spending time with God alone. And you're even intentional in your friendships because you didn't want your friends to pile on Ray.
I did not.
You were still in some ways trying to protect, and you were trying to protect your marriage,
I was.
fighting for your marriage.
Right.
So once again, you don't know what day is going to happen to the next, and for 5 years you walked through this.
That's about the way it was. It wasn't all bad. We've
Yeah.
been trying to, this last week, thinking about all the good things that actually transpired during
Through
those
that.
5 years.
Yeah.
But there was always, I never knew what was happening, if he's still seeing this person.
Yeah.
I don't know what he's doing.
Because
I
he's
knew
home every night, right?
every
he spent the night at home every
never
night.
Never
Yeah.
left home
Yeah.
overnight. He had been seen by someone else out with this person, and that person came and talked to me, and that was rather one of those difficult times. She didn't know that I was aware that something was going on. I didn't know who, but I did know that something was happening. I guess maybe I was burying my head in the sand. Did you
Yeah.
ever think maybe
Yeah.
that's part of the thing? But I was just trusting the Lord to get me through a day, one day at a time, for myself and my family. And
Yeah.
my marriage was important to me. I did have a few people that said things like, you shouldn't have to go through this. I wouldn't put up with that. Those kind of friends.
And it wasn't, and that's, they're probably speaking out of trying to protect you, as
I'm
a
sure
friend.
that's
Yeah,
true.
Yeah. So, Ray, for these five, there was a time Jeannie had told me the story where one time you went out to the couch to go to sleep, and she said, "What are you doing out here?" And you said, "Well, I'm going to sleep on the couch." And she just crawled right up on the couch with you.
I
She wasn't
absolutely
gonna
did.
let you. She was.
He just thinks he's going to get away from me. I'm not going to let him. I still thought he needed me.
Yeah.
There was another
Yeah.
thing. And I was going to be available,
Yeah.
which I think for people going through a difficult time, don't seclude yourself away from your mate.
Yeah.
I knew that he still needed me. He didn't want to admit that.
Yeah.
He was trying not to need me.
We had some very close friends
Yeah.
in the church.
Yeah.
And afterwards, I had found out that when he prayed for me, he prayed that I'd be miserable. And I was. I couldn't sleep. I was miserable.
Wasn't his prayer that you'd be miserable and wouldn't sleep.
Just miserable.
Miserable. So you were miserable. Yeah.
He
So.
was praying you could not sleep.
Yeah.
Ray found that out later. Why?
Yeah. So this goes on. Now this is why the church is being built.
Well, yeah.
Towards the end.
It was getting towards the end of it.
Yeah.
I've got a date in my head. It was November 17th. We were still at the old church.
Yeah. Yep.
And we had a young man come in.
Okay, I'm going to stop you.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay, sorry. So while this church is being built, you're helping, and there's two contractors here at the
Yes.
church, Christian men,
Yes.
love God. And so they're just here, and every once in a while speaking into your life,
That's
just
it.
being godly men.
Yeah.
Typical godly men, being good examples.
Yep.
Okay. So one of the things that you saw maybe a potential turn in your relationship is Ray comes home one day about buying a motorcycle.
That's right.
Okay, so
1984.
1984, he comes home and talks about a motorcycle. You look at this as an opportunity of, he's not necessarily wanting to go buy a motorcycle to be off by himself, but this is something we can do together.
Otherwise, I felt he wouldn't have taken me to go buy it.
Yeah.
He wanted to go look at motorcycles, and we were still in this situation. Again, I don't know how deep. I don't know, but we've survived now at least 4 years by this
Yeah.
time in this relationship.
So you're maybe seeing potential, this is good, this
Looks
might be
like an
going into
answer.
better, it looks like maybe we're going in. So now we think November 1985-ish was kind of the time frame.
17th.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
a Sunday.
Okay, Kamel's there, and you think probably with one or two?
Her two babies.
Her two
were there.
babies,
Mhm.
okay. So you have a special speaker come to church, an evangelist is at church that morning.
Yes.
Okay. Evangelist is there, and he starts going up and down aisles or something.
Yes.
Okay, so tell me about that morning. Tell us about that morning.
He was a young man out of Trinity. He had an arrest record.
Okay.
He thought maybe he might be going back to jail.
Wow.
I would call him a pew kicker. he spoke, and we had our sanctuary in the old church was long, and there was 3 sections. And he started on the far section and worked his way down and asked everyone, if you was to die tonight, would you go to heaven?
He looked him in the eye.
Looked him right in the eye.
So imagine someone with a microphone's coming around to every single person in the room if you were to die tonight.
He didn't linger. He didn't, if they said anything, he just went to the next.
So does he get to you?
No.
Okay.
He never made it to me. He went down and back up and started down another aisle. And I thought, I needed to go forward. And I rededicated my life that night. I believe I even received the baptism of the Holy Spirit that night. It's hard to say. He came back the following year. Up here, we dedicated the church.
Yeah.
We had quite a few people go forward. I wasn't the only one.
There were about probably 350 to 400 people in that Sunday morning service.
Yeah.
No one got up and walked out. You'd have kind of thought you might have a mass exodus when he starts over here and is going to ask every person and told them if they wanted to go to heaven, then, and if they didn't admit that they were going to. He didn't prolong the...
Yeah. It wasn't one of those, I got to get to lunch.
But there were hundreds of people.
Okay.
And he did say, if you already know, you don't have to wait for me
Yeah.
to get to you. And so...
So you go forward,
I go
you
forward.
repent, you ask God, forgive you ask for God's forgiveness.
It was a powerful service. Many people were in the altar that morning.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think you were saying he came back the next year,
Came back the next year, kind of a dedicate. It was.
He wasn't part of the dedication.
No, he wasn't. But
it was-
he had the same
Same
type
kind of message, yeah.
And I sat there, and it was just dead. No movement, no nothing. It was just dead. And that confirmed in my heart that he was here for one reason, and that was me.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't know where I would have been if I hadn't responded.
You felt like that was a morning, I have to go forward.
Yes.
You felt compelled that was your
Yes.
your chance to go.
Yes.
So he comes back next year, no one else is really feeling it. You're thinking over time now, God sent him here that morning just for me.
Yes.
Yeah. And a lot of times we feel that, man, God spoke to me that morning. That message was for me, and there's 7, 10 other people that it may be.
Right.
But man, you really felt like God. And then after you go to the altar, you repent, then you go back to Jeannie.
Yes.
Yeah. So you asked Jeannie to forgive you.
Yes, I did.
So Jeannie, you're like, nope, we need to talk about it now. Like, what was your response when he comes back to you?
Same as, like I felt like, again, the Lord gives me these answers, but I said, I already forgave you. And it was true. In my heart, I had already forgiven him. And when he went to the altar, it was just like a release. But I honestly had already decided in my heart to forgive him. We had this motorcycle. We were doing more things together. I had seen him changing. And so in my heart, it wasn't a hard thing to forgive him. This was what I had prayed for. This is what I asked the Lord for. I could not have not forgiven him. But it was, and we still didn't have to drudge through all of that. We didn't have to go over all the 5 years and know a whole lot of detail.
A lot of times this is like, say, like a child or something that's far away from God and they come and repent. You'd been doing the work for 5 years, praying for him, wanting this exact thing. And now it's more probably just a rejoicing in your heart.
Amen.
That God's coming,
That's
that
right.
God's done this.
It was an answer to prayers, lots of prayers.
Yes. So real quick, you had mentioned the other day when we were talking, Stacy was at chapel several weeks before this happened. Tell about that phone call real
Our
quick.
youngest daughter had started college at North Central Bible College. that fall, right in 85, and she called home and one day and talked to me and said, "This is the year for Daddy." And I said, "What makes you say that?" And she said, "We had a chapel service today, and it was on the prodigal son. And the Lord affirmed to me, this is the year for Daddy." So, and then she told me that another friend, the ones that had been praying for him that he'd not rest until he made his heart right, they had also told her that so it was a confirmation for her for what Jack and Norma had told her, that the Lord was going to restore Ray.
So a few weeks earlier, you're getting just
Only weeks
probably
ahead.
weeks, probably some hope.
Right.
God's going to do something. God's working.
And of course I believed her, and I encouraged her to trust the Lord for that. That's true.
Yeah, your faith teaches you that, hey, this isn't it was confirmed in someone else. This is
Was.
God speaking. So now there's still a lot of collateral damage, all those things that happen. Now that we're 35 years beyond this now, today. How many grandkids?
We have 5 grandchildren, 4 of them married,
Yep.
2 of them in ministry.
Okay. And how many great-grandkids?
8.
As of yesterday, 8.
As of yes. So they had a new new baby born just a few days ago. Kayan had another, was it a girl?
Friday.
Friday.
Baby girl.
So it's easy to look. We talked about this last week. It's easy to look at people's lives. You've seen Ray and Jeannie at this church, and you can be, everything's good, and they have a good life and long marriage, 60 years of marriage. They're taking trips to go see kids and grandkids and experiencing so many wonderful things. Once again, it's easy to look on in life and not know of any of the pain that they had to endure walking through that for 5 years, all of the damage that it causes. God saves you and gives you another chance. And now you guys have had 35 years. What are some of your favorite memories in those 35 years that you just would probably not have happened if your marriage didn't continue, that God didn't bring you back to Him? What are 1 or 2 memories or just things that you're just really grateful for that you guys stuck with it? Because you could have walked away. You probably had people telling you to walk away at times.
I did have people think that, but our youngest daughter, Stacy, that was at Bible college, met her husband there, and they've been in ministry now for nigh on to 30, well, it's been over 30 years, and so those are thrilling times. We, went to those graduation services, went to those ordination services here in Iowa, actually. And then we saw that our grandchildren all went to Christian colleges. Every one of them met Christian mates. So all those weddings, all 4 of those, have all married someone. They realized how important it was to wait.
We've been really blessed with grandchildren serving the Lord.
Yes.
We're very thankful for that.
And there's a song called The Blessing. And it means so much to me.
Yeah.
So
Hopefully, you said they're going to be singing that next week.
We're singing that. I think that's on the list for next week.
We had a 60th wedding anniversary, or 60th anniversary last summer, and all of our children and grandchildren. We missed one grandson from being there, but we were all together, praying together, worshiping together, even during what was still kind of a period of supposedly COVID, but it didn't affect any of our children or grandchildren. They were all there praying together and singing that song about the blessing and how the Lord blesses the next generation and the next generation, your children and their children and their children. And we realized how God has blessed us.
You guys, I know we've shared this before. You guys are living the legacy that you want to leave behind.
yes.
It isn't just, hey, we want to do this in our older age. You've lived in such a way that has created an environment for your kids, for your grandkids, for your great-grandkids. Now your great-grandkids are being raised in those homes.
They are.
And the hope is that their children, it's passing it down from one generation to the next. You guys have been able to do that, and it's hard. And there may be some that have prodigals out there, whether maybe it's a spouse that's away from God, maybe it's a child away from God. And I think that's part of this story. Ray, you were deep in it, and God rescued you.
Yes.
And God's hand of grace
Yes, I do.
reached out to you in a time when you needed it the most. And you guys have been married for so long. It was just a testimony of God's, once again, redemption. And his great love for us. And we love seeing your grandkids and all those little things too. What's one last word of advice to couples who might be struggling? I know this is a curveball. I didn't give you this question. Marriage is hard.
It's work.
It's hard for Christians.
Yes, it is.
Trying to do it without God is even worse. So for those of us trying to have godly marriages, what are what's maybe one or two things you might say? Sticking it through, it's worth it. What are some of those things?
I would like to say, especially for the women, your husband needs affirmation. I don't care if you've been married to him for 5 years, 10 years, 20, 30, 40 years. Your husband needs affirmation. And I think, as I can speak only for myself as a woman, we kind of can get flip about things or just not show the appreciation. The guys are buying gifts to show they love us. They want to bring flowers and perfume and things to show us that. And we don't necessarily, you can do all those things and buy gifts, depends on your love language. But I think really guys need to know how important they are to you, how much you appreciate that they provide for you. And I think that had gotten lax in my life, to be honest with you. I've married 19, 20 years, raising kids, and I think I didn't show him how much I appreciated him. And it's not until you think you've lost something that you realize the value. And that can be that way with physical things too. But your marriage, what's more important to you? And so I would say invest in your marriage. We were pretty good about getting away for weekends, just little. It didn't have to be much. You don't have to spend a lot of money to just go to the lake for maybe an overnight and have just some time alone. I recommend women invest in your husbands.
Ray, anything you'd like to say, or any advice to guys, or just any advice in general, marriage, or just leaving that legacy you want to leave?
I don't have that kind of wisdom, I guess. I tell you what, never go to sleep angry. Go to bed and every night tell her you love her. Wake up in the morning and tell her you love her.
He does that every day.
She's getting tired of it.
He just thinks I'm tired of it, but it's the truth. He doesn't go to bed without telling me how much he loves me and kisses me, and he has tried to make up for any of those lean years.
Yeah.
And sometimes we forget that words that are spoken cannot be taken back.
Yeah.
They don't go away. And for me, even this week of knowing we were going to share this, it's hard to go back through hard times and think about it. But I was talking to my youngest daughter, and she said, but sometimes we need to remember. And I thought, we do sometimes need to be reminded. And it's hard. We celebrate every happy occasion in our family, every birthday. If those of you who are on Facebook with me, you know those pictures out there. We celebrate every opportunity we have. And I think that's a good thing to do. Celebrate every day.
Yeah. We talked. One of the things I know was important to you. You had forgiven Ray all those years ago. We don't want him to carry into that guilt or condemnation.
Absolutely
We talked a little bit through that. The one thing we did talk about was, I mentioned we were talking about Job again, and this is one of those moments and seasons in life where you guys had walked with God. You had heard everything you'd heard. You saw God's hand in your life in this situation in a way you had never seen before, probably. And so now it's one of those times where we know the right answers sometimes, but when we walk through it, it's seeing God in a completely different perspective. And I know, Ray, you feel like God has given you more grace than you deserve.
Yes.
And we're grateful. But it does, what you said, Jeannie, is so important. Sometimes we need to be reminded of how God has got us through those times. And, that's part of why we take communion and those different things that we do as well.
That's right,
Yeah.
remembering.
Yeah. All right, well, I want to thank you guys for coming and sharing and taking time and being vulnerable with very hard topics.
And if we ever can help someone else, we're
Yeah.
willing to do that.
Yeah, Ray and Jeannie, if you know someone, you're going through a difficult relationship right now, they're more than happy to just sit and listen and just talk and pray with you. And so if you find yourself here, you know someone who's maybe struggling relationally with a spouse, I want to encourage you, reach out to them after service or on Facebook, whatever might make you the most comfortable, just so they'd love to be able to speak into your life and just pray over you. And it might just be a good couple to kind of, it's someone who's probably maybe away from your situation that can speak into it sometimes is all we need.